right now I'm taking a look at a virtual machine. Right? So this virtual machine has been successfully deployed. And if I want to take a look at what is going on with this virtual machine, right? What type of resources is it working with to ensure that it's functioning properly? One of the key things it's working with is a virtual network, right? The virtual machine is a virtual network for it to function and communicate with other resources, as well as it's working remotely as well to some certain capacity. Now, if I look over here, I can see the virtual network that is associated with this virtual machine. So when I click on that virtual network, I'm being brought into the virtual network environment, right? I can now set up and configure things like our DDoS protection that we talked about. I can even configure an Azure firewall into this virtual network, right? The Azure firewall protects and provides an extra layer of protection to our virtual network. We talked about peering earlier on, right? I can also configure a peering to ensure that this virtual network is able to seamlessly connect to another virtual network. You can see all of those things, even the Microsoft Defender and private endpoints. Now, if I want to go and take a look at the subnets that are under this virtual network, let's take a look at that. If I come down and I extend this right here, I can go under our subnets. And I can see that we have just one subnet here using this address space. And this subnet is available to use over 250 IPs. Now, I have a virtual machine that we were taking a look at just a second ago. And for me to access this virtual machine, I can use what we call an RDP connection, but I want to use a more secured way to access my virtual machine. So in this case, I want to deploy an Azure Bastion. Now we have just one subnet. I remember we talked about the virtual network being able to have multiple subnets. So I can go over here. I can say that the purpose for my subnet is not to use it as a default subnet for my virtual network. No, I want to go for something else. I can go for an Azure Bastion, a virtual network gateway, route server, firewall, but in this case, I want to deploy an Azure Bastion. So I'm going to select Azure Bastion here. Now it is asking me for something that we call an IPv4 address range, which it needs, right? And from here, I can select, if I have multiples, I can select that, right? But over here too, I can decide to change my starting address. But for now, we're going to use this default address. Now, we're only using just an IPv4, you understand? We're not using this in this case for the Azure Bastion. It specifically uses the IPv4 address. Now, if I wanted to configure much more security, or I wanted to perform certain uses for this particular virtual subnet, right, other than the Azure Bastion, I can set up a NAT gateway over here. But for now, we're not going to get into that, right? Because the NAT gateway is especially more useful when we are dealing with something in the cloud that we call private endpoint. It helps us with our outbound internet access, right? And that's why you have that word there. It's recommended for outbound. You know, we talked about inbound and outbound, right? Something that leaves your resource to go to another resource. So we're not going to work on all of that, right? For now, we are okay with this. And I'm just going to simply click add. And it's going to add that new subnet. So it's adding another new subnet, but this subnet that is adding, you see that Azure Bastion subnet is not necessarily the default subnet, but a special type of subnet that is used for Azure Bastion. And you can see that its IPv4 address is different from this right here. So that's kind of how we sort of utilize that. Now, if I now want to monitor this, right? So let's go do something. The purpose of deploying this Bastion is to ensure that we can securely access our virtual machine remotely. The virtual machine is like a supercomputer that is created in the cloud. I don't need to have the virtual machine or the computer with me physically. I create it in the cloud. I can utilize it in the cloud. I can share it. I can give access to that virtual machine to so many other users, and then they can also access that virtual machine. Now, let us go and access that virtual machine. Now, when I'm back in here, I'm going to go to something we call connect, because I want to connect remotely into this virtual machine. I want to click on the connect over here at first. I'm going to see that I can connect through an RDP, which is not really safe for production environments, right? Production environments means the final environment where all of this is deployed so that users can actually utilize this for real life purposes, right? So if I come down over here, I'm going to see different options here that I can use to log in. So I can see the Bastion, but let's go through the right route. So I'm going to click Bastion here. And when I select Bastion over here, let's give it a few seconds. It tells me that I can now deploy Bastion, right? Why can I deploy this Bastion? I can deploy it because I configured a subnet, right, to add Bastion that deployed under this virtual network. That's where we're just coming from right now, right? So it tells me all of this key information. And I can now go ahead to say deploy Bastion. If I wanted to configure it manually, I can do that, but we don't need that. We're okay with the default selection. So I can now go ahead and click what? Deploy Azure Bastion. Now, as that is creating, I'm going to open up, I'm going to try and see if I can open up a new page over here. So we're going to be monitoring that deployment. It's deploying. It does take a few minutes to deploy. So I'm going to scoop over here. And let us see what it looks like creating a new virtual network, right? We've looked at this virtual network, how it is utilized. Let us go and see how it is created. So I'm going to go under what we call more services, right, in our Azure cloud environment. And remember, in this Azure cloud environment, we actually have key areas, right? We call them categories. These are the key categorical areas in an Azure cloud environment for different functionalities or levels of cloud functions. So in the case of where we have security, remember we're talking about security all day. I can go to security and I can see some of the key functionalities over here. Now, if you're in a full IT training, right, some of the features that we'll be training you to utilize, for example, are your application security groups that are used closely with something we call a network security group. The application security group enables us to easily group different resources together within a network security group. It also enhances the security for those resources and ensures that those resources can securely communicate with each other under a specific network. So if I had two virtual machines or two supercomputers, right, deployed under the network security group we were talking about earlier on, those two virtual machines can talk and communicate with each other securely because of this application security group. So it is a very, very, very important. If you read it, it says you can use application security groups to configure network security as natural extensions of an application structure by arbitrarily grouping them, right? We talked about that, right? And defining network security, because you can utilize, so stuff like that. You understand? So it's very, very important. That we also talked about web application framework as well. So we'll cover those things. Remember, I talked about log analytics workspace is used for data collection and a host of all other functionalities. Log analytics can be used to configure data collection rules. I know these concepts are key, but we don't have too much time to be diving into the explanation of all of these key things. But the log analytics, for example, is needed when you're creating a Microsoft Sentinel resource, right? And you also can use your log analytics workspaces for things like our virtual remote, Azure remote desktop, which is similar to virtual machines. The Azure virtual desktop is more or less like a simple Windows computer. So whenever you've seen some companies that say, oh, we don't need to send you a laptop. We're just going to give you so and so access, and then you can go in through Citrix or so and so to go and access it. That's an example of Azure virtual desktop. We also have key areas like application gateway. Application gateway is a form of load balancer that balances traffic across web applications, right? So when you deploy a web application and you need to share the balance of traffic. So say, for example, you have a lot of servers attached to your website, right? And there are peak times that you're going to have traffic. You can apply application gateway as a load balancer to maintain traffic between servers so that when one server is having a lot of workload another server can take place. It can switch responsibility to another server to do what? To balance traffic on that website. That is why the concept behind it is called load balancing. You are balancing what? You are balancing the load. And that is why it tells you over here it is used for application level routing, right? That we just talked about it, route and transfer what? Load between the servers, right? So the application gateway is the underlying technology ensuring that that is happening, and then doing the load balancing service as well, so that we can do what? Ensure that we achieve what? High availability, resiliency, and scalability. You understand that? That's why you see those words there: scalable, high availability, and stuff like that. So a lot of fun stuff. You can see Microsoft Sentinel that we talked about, right? We can see our Microsoft Defender for cloud. So as a cloud security engineer, we'll be spending a lot of time in the security area here to ensure that you grasp the concept of what is going on as a cloud security engineer in the cloud space, right? We have the Microsoft Entra ID that I've mentioned a lot, right? Formerly called Azure Active Directory. Talked about that extensively. We talked about multi-factor authentication. So you can see all of those things that I mentioned. You start to see them live and direct, right? Your DDoS, right? Your distributed denial of service attacks. You have your key vault. Talk about key vault, where you can securely save secrets, keys, and certificates. You understand? Very, very important. That comes into encryption and cryptography, right? And that's why you see safeguard cryptographic keys and other secrets, as well as certificates used in the cloud. So very, very important aspect over here. When we jump into networking, you know, we talked about network security as well too. So you can see some of those key concepts under here. We talked about our firewalls and firewall manager. You can see that. And what do we see over here? We see a network security group, which is very, 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 very important as well. When we come under network foundation, you can see our Bastion, right? We just deployed a Bastion. By the way, let us go and check the update to that Bastion. You can see still deploying the Bastion. It's a big deal, so it takes a few minutes, and that's why I had us redivert our time here to go on as the Bastion is successfully deployed over there. So you can see some of the things we talked about when we're looking at the AWS environment. Talked about route tables as well too, but I won't delve deep into some of these things so that we're not overloaded with information. We have other things like private links that are important, network interfaces. These are things we cover in the full IT training. Our DNS zones, our public or private IP addresses, our NAT gateways that we're looking at when we were configuring a subnet as well. We look at our peerings. We talk about virtual network peering. We can launch it from over there. We have our VPN gateways, also called the virtual network gateways, which enables communication between cloud resources and physical resources or on-premise resources. You understand? So you can see that over there, right? It tells you, it connects your on-premises networks to your Azure cloud environment. So which means a company can work in an hybrid cloud environment where they have their private data center and their public data, the public cloud service provider such as Azure. So a company can have resources in Azure over here, such as a virtual machine here and a virtual machine in their physical environment. And they can use things like ExpressRoute and virtual network gateways or VPN gateways. That's why it says VPN gateways. To do what? To establish a connection and flow of data and information between those two quite unique and distinct resources. It enables that through key concepts such as what? Site-to-site VPN, all right? And that's why it says the VPN, or rather, it is a similar way that you set up to connect to a remote branch office. This connectivity is secure and uses industry standard protocols, all right? And now, we go down over here, we can see our load balancers, right? We typically have two types of load balancers in the Azure cloud. We have our Azure load balancer that can be used across, say, for example, virtual machines, right? You want to have a scalable virtual machine environment where you have virtual machines that also do what? They balance the load on them. You can provision, configure, and deploy a load balancer, put it behind the virtual machine so that what? So that you can share the responsibility of whatever is coming into that virtual machine. So say, for example, a virtual machine is using heavy databases, right? And you're reaching out to that virtual machine. You can have multiple instances of virtual machine and configure a load balance across those virtual machines. This will mean you can plug in, because you can actually control the amount of virtual machines that you want to be around your load balancer, right? So let's say you have 5. You can say I want a maximum of 5 load balancers and a minimum. That means at minimum, two virtual machines should be working together to share responsibility of traffic coming into them. They are going to be identical, and that's why they are called the virtual machine instances. It's a virtual machine that has an instance of itself physically in however amount you want it. So I can say when we are in a peak period, when we are busy and our databases are receiving a lot of, start to increase the virtual machine automatically. So it starts going from 2 virtual machines. It now sees that the 2 virtual machines are very busy, right? The databases are easy. People are storing a lot of data, uploading, like they're storing things on their Instagram, but they don't even know where the information is being uploaded to. Then it comes and it creates automatically another virtual machine, another supercomputer, and starts putting in that load in there, right? And that's what load balancer does. It ensures that you have what we call high availability. Why is it using the word high availability? It's using the word high availability to ensure that even during peak periods, your organization will not suffer crashing or any problematic issues, right? You can see people say, if those of us that took note of what happened with Netflix, right? Just the other day when there was a fight, right? You can see Netflix uses AWS and they had a very it because they had servers that fell beyond what they could even imagine would happen, right? And that's where load balancers come in. They ensure that you do not experience things like that. Now, this does not mean they were probably using load balancers, but they were probably not expecting that level of traffic. You understand? And so that's why these things, they play a very important role. When you don't know how these things work behind, it sounds funny. It's like, why is that stuff slow? It's because of things like this, right? By putting in load balancers, you ensure that your organization's resources in the cloud have high availability. They are highly available. That's what that word means, right? That's the word, the high availability, but that's what it means, high availability. And scalable. It scales. It goes out. If traffic increases, it goes to 5 to meet the demand. If the demand reduces, it goes back to maybe 2 or 1, whatever you've configured. And that's what some of all of these things do. Now, lastly, let's take a look at virtual networks. Now, as I'm doing that, I'm going to jump in here and I can see a Bastion was successfully created. So can you see that? That is beautiful. Now, I'm looking at a supercomputer right here. Right? Now, what I can do is for me to log in remotely, rather than me using what we call a RDP connection, and we saw the RDP connection earlier on, right? Rather than me using this RDP connection, I can use Bastion to securely connect, right? And this is happening because of our virtual networks and subnets that the Bastion uses to work as one. So now I can say that the authentication way I want to use to log in to this virtual machine using the Bastion feature is the VM password, right? If I wanted to do, I can choose a password from a key vault. You see what's going on over here, right? We've talked about key vault, where you can store secrets, you can store keys, and you can store what? Certificates. And over here, you can store your password in there, so you don't even have to remember it, right? We don't need to. So you can store your password, and then you can retrieve it from there. But this virtual machine was created with a virtual machine I had in my mind. So I'm not going to choose that option. I'm just going to use the basic function here. And I'm going to put in my password, user name, and then I'm going to pass in my password. Let me retype that just to be sure. And then I can now click connect, and I've clicked this to say open, because it's going to actually open this through a secured web browser. You understand? I'm going to say connect. And you can see it just opened up automatically a new web browser. You can see it says connected. And now it's logging me into this supercomputer called a virtual machine. And so rather than me using the RDP feature, what am I now using? I'm using what? Our Azure Bastion. So we're just going to give that a few more minutes, rather a few more seconds. So it's going to take just a few seconds to sort of load up because this virtual machine is actually, it has a very small random access memory. The random access memory determines how fast your virtual machine can work. And I specifically chose that because this is just a sample virtual machine. So let's give it a few seconds. So you can see that it's opening up the virtual machine, right? Which is this is a Windows computer, basically. So I'm accessing this Windows computer, but because it's a supercomputer, we call them Windows servers. You understand? And you see, so if you use a Windows computer, you can see all of those Windows capabilities right there, right? I can launch my Microsoft Edge. I can go into, this is not as beautiful, as fine as a Windows machine, because again, this is a Windows server. It's more powerful. Yeah, organizations can run highly powerful applications, tools, utilities, database systems. They can deploy web applications using what we call Internet Information Servers on this computer, because it's a supercomputer called a Windows. That's why I see the word there, Windows server. Why you to be using a simple Windows machine, you to say Windows 10, it's still a Windows computer, right? I can go to my folder there and I'm going to show you that directly. So over here, I'm going to expand this and I can use the, let's see, the feature here view, and then I can say properties. Let's see where the properties are. Let's see if I can remember that. Or we can use the this feature over here. Let's see. Forgive me, I'm not really a Windows guy like that, so I'm trying to look for a simple Windows feature right there. Also, I'm using a Mac computer, so I don't have the capability to easily just click the right-hand button. And so we can see all of these different Windows feature over here. But basically what I was looking for is where it tells me information about the Windows PC. Trying to see if I can force myself to launch that information out there. Typically if you just click your right-hand button over here, you'll be able to get that information about your computer information. So where it tells you you're using a Windows computer and, you have so and so information about these Windows computers. There should be a feature over here that is called properties, but I'm not just able to simply see it. Okay, I got it right there. So over there, it shows us this computer information, right? So expand that a little bit. And by the way, this server is slow because it's the cheapest. It's actually a free virtual machine. But it has just 1 gig random access memory. So if I open up the task manager, you see the task manager has just 1 gig random access memory. But you can see this processor, yeah, this is an Intel Xeon, Xeon or whatever they pronounce that as, with 2.3 gigahertz and 973 MB. And that right there is the RAM. You understand? So it's telling us it's a connection. It's just because it's very, very slow. But that's fine. We just wanted to show you how Azure Bastion works over there. And so now let's take a look at our virtual network lastly before we round up over here. So I'm going to go ahead and click virtual networks because we want to create a new virtual network. Remember, again, we've talked about virtual network, right? And how it is utilized and stuff like that. I'm going to quickly come back over here and try to grab this wording over here so I don't have to type in a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to come back over here. And over here, we need something that is called a subscription, right? To start creating this. We also need a resource group. A resource group is like a virtual folder for classifying and grouping your cloud resources. So I have one over here. I'm going to select that. Then I'm going to provide a virtual network name over here. I'm going to call this VNet. And I can just simply call this VNet2. And then I can choose the region, right? Because these are cloud resources and you can decide or determine which cloud location or region you want to have this created. Now, with organizations, typically they would have their own set of rules on how to choose regions, right? Most organizations can say, well, since we're working in the Eastern branch, we're expected to be using the US East branch, right? So they say go use US East branch. So organizations can say, okay, even though we are based in the US, in the East US, the guys that are going to be utilizing this once we've created this, they are in central US, right? Or south central US, let's say in Dallas or Houston or somewhere like that. And they are going to need to be close to their contact support center And so they want us to deploy this to the South Central. I can now go over here. I can come over here. I can search for the South Central, right? And I can search South Central. But in this case, we're going to use the West US 2, all right? So I'm going to click next. You see, now over here, you can see we deployed what we called an Azure Bastion using a subnet, right? We created an extra subnet in our previous virtual network. Let's flash our mind back. I'm going to quickly jump back there. I'm going to go to the home page over here for the virtual machine. And then I'm going to go into our virtual network here. And then we can see down under this virtual network, we have what? We have two subnets, right? The default subnet and the Azure Bastion subnet. So, and over here, we can see if I wanted to deploy an Azure Bastion right now under this virtual network, as opposed to doing it after the virtual network was created, right? That is configuring post-deployment, right? After the deployment, that's what we did over here. It's a post-deployment configuration that we did. Now here we are doing a pre-deployment configuration that is called what? It's called a provisioning state. This is the state of provisioning your cloud resource before it is deployed. All of these steps we have to go through is what? We are provisioning a different provisioning state, right? And so over here, I can say enable Azure Bastion. Then it tells me, what do you want to call this? I'll say, I can easily just say, call this Azure Bastion 2. Right? It needs a public IP address. I can create a special one. I'll say, no problem, go with this new default one you're creating. At the same vein too, the Azure Firewall, if I wanted to create that as well too, I can click it. I can say enable Firewall. Then it starts asking that. You can see it's creating a subnet. So basically, if I were to configure this Azure Firewall right now, and I configure this Azure Bastion, and of course, this virtual network also needs what? It also needs its own default subnet. What is happening is that when I deploy this virtual network, it's going to come with 3 subnets with 3 different IP address spaces. Now, the IP address over here, right? You can see this has 2. So this has 2 because one has the default, one has the Azure Bastion. And what is going on over here? We are adding another feature here called Azure Firewall that also needs a subnet, and is providing the subnet name over there for us. You understand? And so that is typically how this works. But we're not going to deploy a firewall. We're just going to leave the Bastion. And then I can go to IP addresses. And then what do I see? I see that I can add a new subnet if I want. But right now, it's providing us with 3 subnets, like I just mentioned. But because I clicked enable firewall subnet, even though I unchecked it, Azure has already what? Preconceived that notion and selected it for me. And that's why I told you when we deploy it, we'll see what? We'll see 3 subnets. And right now we see the subnet with 3. The default, the one for Azure Bastion, and the one for Azure Firewall. And you can see what is going on over here. They all have different IP address range because they can't work in the same range. That comes into play when we talk about segmentation, right? Different segments for different features under our virtual network. Let's quickly take a look at that again lastly. Let's come over here. Track it down really shortly. I'm going to do a quick search over here. Talks about subnets over here. The subnets enable segmented network what? Structures for fine-grained control. And that is an example of what we are seeing playing out in our very eyes over there. I can then go ahead to say, delete that one. I don't want to see. This one I can say, okay, that is fine. I can choose a different IP address range. Even over here, for this right here, I can change to different address space. We're going to leave that the way, but let's say I want to change the name of this subnet. I'll come over here, and I can come over here. You can see the purpose of this subnet is to act as a default for the virtual network. I can come over here, and I can change the subnet name. Let's say subnet 1. And I can click save. And what do we see? It changes that over there. The next, I can go to review to create, or review plus create, and then now I'm ready to deploy that. But we're not going to deploy that because, we're kind of out of time. I think we've almost gone for 2 hours, and I see everyone is still here, so which means everyone is really enjoying it. Apart from, I know Kay had to run along to go pick up his daughter. But that's what is going on over here. All right. So we're going to round this up over here. And let's see. So I'm going to stop this right here. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm going to stop it so that we can have questions if we have any questions, and then I'll help you answer those questions. But again, as we wrap up over here, thanks everyone for joining. And I hope you really enjoyed this session. Again, remember, if you want to join the full ScarStack IT training for this, get in touch with us. You can send us an email at techinfo@scarstacksolution.com. Our email is on the website, and then you can reach out to us to enroll. Do make sure you visit our website. It is scarstacksolution.com. Check it out, and our website actually even has the syllabus, right? If I come over here, I click View IT Trainings, I can go down here to Cloud Security Engineer right here, and I can download a copy of the syllabus to see exactly what we cover in the syllabus, right? We've got introduction to cloud security and CSPM, cyber threat vulnerabilities, all of these things we looked at, and then we can see some of the tools that are utilized. So the syllabuses are there for you to access, to know exactly what you're going to be expecting during the training. Again, remember the training is a 2 months training valued at $800 with a payment plan of $400 per month. So when you come in, if you don't have the full $800, you can jump into the payment plan, pay $400 for the first month, and before the second month comes again, you pay your balance to complete your full IT training. Again, we talked about how much they earn. They earn a significant amount of money. Cloud security engineers between 161K to 266K. So definitely take advantage of that. Also remember, we also offer other IT trainings, right? We can see our IT trainings in cybersecurity as well, IT training as a cloud solution engineer or cloud solution architect, and then our cloud security engineer. We also have our full stack engineers. These are for the coders, right? The developers have been writing code. I have about 16 years professional experience writing code, and as well as 10 years experience in the Azure and AWS field as well. Thanks once more for joining. My name is Olu, and I look forward to seeing everyone. But yeah, does anyone have a question?
Yeah, quick one, Olu.
Oh yeah, sure, no problem. Yes.
So, is cybersecurity like a little? I know it's on its own, but can it be like a part of the cloud security?
Yes. So yes, you understand. While traditionally cybersecurity does not have to do with the cloud, and there are a lot of people that have job roles that have nothing to do with the cloud. You understand? But because the move to the cloud, right, over time, a lot of companies over the years, everybody's going to the cloud, right? And so what happens is there now needs to be there needs to be a need to cover those cybersecurity goals in the cloud as well as protect the cloud generally. And that's where cloud security comes in. It covers a little bit of cybersecurity because some of those concepts we are seeing in the cloud, such as our firewall, our DDoS attack, our CM tools, our security information and event management, security orchestration, automation, response, identity and access management, all of these things that we see normally in cybersecurity, we also see them in the cloud, right? Endpoint detection response, cyber threats, we also see them in the cloud. So the cybersecurity generally now, if anybody's teaching cybersecurity, they would likely touch cloud security because someone will come out and when they start seeing cybersecurity jobs, they start telling you, you start seeing cloud, you must be aware of AWS, you must know how to use AWS, Azure, you understand, knowing how to defend our resources that we have in the cloud. So natively speaking, right, natively or traditionally speaking, cybersecurity just used to be cybersecurity, but now cybersecurity now has to include and tolerate cloud security because organizations are moving some of those things that they secure traditionally on premises, they are now securing them in the cloud as well too. You understand? So, but there are so many IT trainings that don't cover that for cybersecurity. Our own cybersecurity training even covers that. So whether you're going from cybersecurity or cloud security, you are covered on that. The biggest advantage the cloud security has is that it is the most modernized area of cybersecurity that companies are focusing on right now. You understand? And
right.
So while it is like with ScarStack solution, right, when you get the full training, you'll be having a 70% cloud security, we'll cover everything, and then we'll bring in like 30 to 40% of the real cybersecurity that has nothing to do with the cloud. You understand? And thereby, you are now infused with those two roles together. You get what I mean?
Okay. So, okay, yes. Sorry, I get that. But so that means a combination of cloud security engineer and the cybersecurity engineer is a perfect combination.
Yes, you understand. Not only that, but even if you are doing it is inescapable, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, right.
As a cloud security engineer, you're already delving with cybersecurity natively and in the cloud. You understand?
Yes.
You get the right training. That's why I want. You see this cloud security training, some of the tools you're seeing here, Wireshark, Nessus, Nmap, some of these tools here, they are used for cybersecurity training as well too. You understand?
Okay. Yes.
Over here, you start seeing some of those tools over here too. We see Zscaler, we see Splunk, we see the Nessus. We're just taking a look at Kibana. You understand?
Okay. So the reason why I'm asking is, so now because if I'm trying to do the cloud engineering and the cyber security as a full courses, because going into the cloud engineering, you're just going to take a little part of the cyber security, right?
Cloud security, rather.
So yes.
Yeah, cloud security. Yeah. So, because as a cloud solution architect, right, or cloud,
already.
You'll be touching cloud security. You understand? But you won't touch it as extensively, deep, and broad. You understand? And we won't cover anything cyber security. You understand? Because that's not the role of a cloud solution architect. So, a cloud solution architect somewhat knows about security. You understand? But not as in depth as the cloud security engineer. That's why they are both in the cloud. But yes, cloud solution architect and cloud security architect.
Okay.
You understand?
Yes. Okay. Yes. So I don't really need the cyber security.
No, you don't. As a cloud,
the cloud solution architect.
Yes, you definitely don't have any business. You understand? However, because of your knowledge as your administrator, right? Because you're in my full training, right? You remember we're talking about security, Bastion, virtual network, right? A part of cloud security. So you're aware of it. You understand?
Yes.
Work with Defender too, work with monitoring. So you're aware of those things, but the cloud security goes in depth. You understand? Full time. It's just like we did during your training, you covered DevOps, right? But we covered the essential. Now, when you come for a DevOps engineer training, you go deep. You understand? And that is the key difference. Does that
make sense? Thank you very much. Thank you.
So definitely, if people come to me and they recommend, Olu, what do I do? Do I go for cybersecurity or cloud security? I always advise them to go for cloud security because that's the more modernized approach right now. You understand? So, and the cloud security also covers cybersecurity as well. So I also offer that. Now, if someone is already someone already has cybersecurity background too, you understand? Because there are so many cybersecurity people that don't know anything about cloud security. You understand?
Right.
Training that is good for them too. If you're a cloud solution architect, just like your own training as well, too, that you do successfully, and you want to delve into security in depth, you understand? You can now jump into cloud security. You understand? The emerging cloud security actually pays slightly more than our cloud solution architect. And that's why cloud solution architect is seen as the second best paid job in the Azure environment, just right after cloud security. And so that's, you understand? That's how the structure is. And I'll just show you one last thing right here as we wrap up. I believe it should be somewhere around over here. Let's see, Azure job role types. So let's take a look at that. Azure job role types. So we'll come here, right? We start seeing some different roles. And, I probably showed you this already during the beginning of your full IT training. We see the normal Microsoft Azure administrator, right? And then we now see the Microsoft Azure solution architect, which you did, right? And that's much more slightly bigger than this. That's why it comes over here and tells you they are the second most highly paid professional. You understand? And so that's how it sort of works. Yeah. So hopefully that answered your question.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem. Thanks. If there's no more questions from anyone, we'll round up now. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, guys, for being in here. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in our training. Okay? Thanks, everyone.
Quick one last question. When next is the next class time?
Probably looking at next full training.
Yes.
So the IT trainings, we've structured things a little bit right now. Now we're starting every new month. You understand?
Every new month. Okay.
Yeah, trainings are for 2 months.
The cloud engineering every month. You start one class every month.
All of them. You understand? And we have different time frame availability for them. You understand? We already have, like right now, people that want to join in December, we already have like I think 14. I think I'm going to have 2 more people enroll today, pay and enroll today. You understand? So and typically the structure is when they come in over here and they click view IT trainings and they come down here. Say for example, they wanted to sign up for a cloud security engineer role. They click on enroll now. It takes them to the enrollment page, gives them details. Then they can now click on enroll. So if you wanted to start in December, you click December. The class December 2, because that's probably like a Monday. You understand? We have 3 time slots.
Okay.
You want to go for 4 p.m.
I'm coming. Give me a minute. I'm almost done, guys.
Yeah. So you can select 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and then you see the price there for 1 month. If you want to go for the full 2 months and just pay and not have to worry, you understand? You select quantity of 2 and then you sign up. So you'll be signing up for December and January, which will make your full 2 months. If you want to go on the payment plan, you first select 1. So that will secure your first month of December. And then as January is approaching for you to complete your remaining 1 month, you come back in there to pay again. So that's pretty much the enrollment structure.
Okay, thank you so much.
As you can see, the dates are there if you want to start on any month. You understand?
Yeah.
Structured in a way where people don't have to wait forever, right? Back in the days, you'd have to wait.
That's cool.
Yeah, you have to wait. So now you can start every month and then, spread a lot of time to be able to accommodate all of those classes. Yeah. All right. Thanks. Those are very good and key questions. You understand? So if anyone does not have any more questions, I'll wrap up over here. Thanks everyone for joining. And, looking forward to. Do you have any more questions? Okay, good. Okay. So thanks everyone, and we're going to see you in our next session. All right. Thanks everyone.